Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com. This is part 6 of the beginner's Java tutorial, and in this tutorial we are going to look at if statements. In the last tutorial we saw for loops, and in the next tutorial we're going to look at getting user input. But before we do that, we're going to look at if. So go to File, New Java Project as usual in Eclipse, and I'll call this tutorial 6. Next, finish, and let's create a new class as usual. By now you will hopefully remember how to do this pretty well. I'll call it application, and just for kicks I'm going to type the main method out from scratch. Public static void main string array args, which might sound like Chinese to you, or if you are Chinese it might sound like Greek, but don't worry about that. So if we've already seen one or two examples of conditional statements. For example, if I type boolean, what should we call it? Cond for condition maybe, equals 1 less than 6, and then I can do sysout control space cond, and this will display true when I run it. True. Another possibility would be I could say let's say 3 greater than 8, which is false. There's also a not equal to. I could say 5 not equal to 2, which is of course true. We're using the exclamation mark for a not symbol here. True. Or let's say 5 not equal to 5, which is false. And there is of course a test for equality. 4 equals 3, which is false. It's really important to note here that a single equal sign means assignment. It means you're setting something equal to something. To test for equality you need equals equals. It's not immediately obvious that the two things are different, but if you think about it a bit, they are two completely different things. Assigning equality and testing equality, that is. And let's try 5 equals 7. Okay, great. False. Let's use these conditions in an if statement. An if statement looks like this. You type if, which is the keyword, and then you need a condition in round brackets after that. And then you have curly brackets, which enclose some code that you want to run if the condition is true. So for the condition, let's try 4 equals 4, which is true of course. Sysout, let's say yes, it's true. So I will run this code if this condition is true, and if it isn't I won't do anything. What do I do? I've got to get rid of this, of course. I use Control D to get rid of whole lines, which is a handy shortcut. Yes, it's true. Or if I give it a condition that isn't true, let's say 5 not equal to 5, not equal to 5, then nothing happens. Now, of course I can use variables in there, which is sort of the whole point. Let's say I've got a variable integer, maybe int my int equals 20. Let's say I can say if my int is less than 30, which it is, then I'll do the print. Now often I want to take some kind of action, and if the condition isn't true I want to take a different action. So let's say my int less than 10. Okay, this is false, so at the moment nothing happens because this condition is false, so it doesn't do the code. But I could put a else statement. So I type the keyword else, and then I have curly brackets as well. Notice that Eclipse is automatically adding the second curly bracket when I type the first one and hit return. And here I will type system.out.println no, it's false. Okay, no, it's false. Or if I set this equal to something that is true, my int less than 100, then I get the first bit, but the else doesn't do anything. There is also a else if. For example, I can say else if and then round brackets, and I can put another condition in here. So here I could say, for example, if my int is less than 100, I want to do this. Else if my int is greater than, so here I've got my int less than 10, and here I can say if my int is greater than 20, I'll do this. So, and I'll set my int to 15, and then nothing happens because this is false, so it doesn't do this. And this else if condition is also false, so it doesn't do this. But if I set it to less than 10, this will be true. So I'll get this. And if I set it to greater than 20, I'll set this equal to 30. Then I get this condition. What happens if I say else if my int less than 20 and set it equal to 5? Now both conditions are true, but if I run it, as you can see, these are kind of mutually exclusive. So it's saying if it's less than 10, yes, do this, forget about everything else. And that's the idea behind else if. This is an alternative. So if one of these, if this clause is true and it does this, it's not going to do this. This only happens if else if this isn't true and this is. I can combine if, else if, and else, of course. So I can say else sysout none of the above, and I can say, so this says it's less than 10. Let's make this say it's greater than 20, and let this be 15. Now this isn't true, this isn't true, so it will just do this because this is what it does if none of these conditions are true, none of the above. As usual, if this seems complex, just have a play around with it and try creating ifs and elses and see what happens. And of course, usually you probably use this with some kind of input or the results of some kind of calculation. And as I say, in the next tutorial, we'll get on to looking at user input. For now, let me just show you one more thing. We've seen while loops before, so a while loop could look like this. I can say int loop, for example, equals 0. So I have a loop counter which usually you set to 0 to start with, but it doesn't have to be. While loop is less than 5, let's say, do loop sysout, and I'll write looping plus loop. Now, so this at the moment is an infinite loop. If I run this, it just loops and loops and loops. Because loop is always less than 5, so it will always do the loop. And I could stop that by incrementing the loop here. Loop plus plus will add 1 to the loop, as we saw last time. It will add 1 to the loop counter, and in this case every time the loop executes. So now we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But another interesting way of doing it, which is sometimes useful, is I could say if loop equals 5, then break. And the break statement just immediately stops the loop executing. So this will just jump out of the loop. If I type, let's type this out here, and I'll type running. Okay, so why isn't this working? If loop is equal to 5, break. Oh, I forgot to increment loop. Right, let's put loop ++ here. Okay, so I'm setting loop equal to 0. I'm saying do the loop while loop is less than 5. But screw that, I'm going to just put true and have an infinite loop here. And then here I'll say if loop equals 5, break out of the loop. And here I increment the loop. So now if I run this, you can see what's happening is it's printing looping 0, running, looping 1, running, and so on till we get to 5. And then as soon as the loop is equal to 5, so it still does this, but then the if says if loop equals 5, break, and at that point it jumps out of the loop, completely jumps out, and it doesn't even get to these statements here. There's no running down here. Okay, that's it for this tutorial, and I hope you'll join me again next time. You can find more information and tutorials on caveofprogramming.com. And until then, happy coding.